The GenNext Youth Behaviour Report offers brand custodians a cheat sheet on South African youth. The research approaches both the Youth Behaviour Report and their brand preference. These findings will play a part in helping the youth better understand the world and navigate through chaos, demonstrate personal growth and explore the world safely with limited risk. Now, to share some more insights, we're joined in studio by Refilwe Maluleke. She is the MD at Yellowwood. Refilwe, very good morning to you. A warm welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you so much.
Before we even go any further, speak to us about the work of Yellowwood. What do you guys do there?
Oh, thank you so much, and good morning to you and your viewers as well. So Yellowwood is a marketing strategy consultancy, and effectively what we do is we help organizations unlock the power of brand to help them drive their growth. Right, that's ultimately what we're about.
Talk to us about what I just talked about, this research and this report. What does it entail?
Absolutely. So the GenNext survey has actually been around for 17 plus years now. And what many people are familiar with is the coolest brand survey, right? So Sunday Times releases the coolest brands, and many brand custodians look forward to that with bated breath. But the second part of it, which in my view is actually even more important, is the youth behavior study. And through that, we talk to 7,000 young people between the ages of 8 and 30 to really understand what's happening with young people, right? How do they feel about the world? How do they feel about themselves? What behavior changes are we seeing in different categories? And really it does, I like the term you use, cheat sheet. It does become almost like a bit of a steer for anybody who wants to engage with youth, connect with youth, to kind of get a better understanding of what's happening with them.
What sort of questions do you ask? What are you trying to get at?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different questions that we ask. I think they probably fall into two different sectors. The one is very much understanding their headspace. So we ask them things like their attitudes towards politics, the economy, the world at large, and how they're feeling about themselves, their communities, etc. So kind of external and internal attitudes. And the second part is more to understand their behavior in the world, right? So things like, how often do they go to malls? How often do they engage online? Those kinds of more behavioral questions versus those which are about perceptions and attitudes.
How accurate, and I know that's difficult, are these, results or findings?
Yeah, it's a very difficult one because at the end of the day, you're asking people, right? And people are flawed, right? Sometimes the ways that we see ourselves is not actually, the way that we are in the world. What I do think is interesting about young people is that generally they do tend to be a little bit more kind of honest and speak from the heart. They haven't really built up all the challenges that we have with our own sense of self. And so from that point of view, our view is that they are in fact very reliable because it's not secondhand, right? We are directly asking young people, what do you think about the world and how much time do you spend online, as an example, or one of the things that really fascinated me was things like how often do you go to a bank, which has increased significantly over the last year, which is so strange because I think to myself, I hardly ever go to
I can't remember the last time I was inside a bank.
I genuinely don't remember the last time I was inside a bank, and yet, they seem to be going, 2 to 3 times a month. And so it's those kinds of questions that, we find interesting.
And they almost operate differently to how when we were younger, they're almost as if they're more bold than we were. Is that what you found in your research?
100%.
More, clear. They're so in what they wanted to say, they have to say it now, and that's it.
You are absolutely right, Leigh. We're absolutely right. I think what has been interesting for us is that their sense of self-esteem is particularly high and higher than we would have expected to see. And when we were trying to get to the bottom of it, one of the things that I think contributes to it is their score for kind of trust in institutions, and particularly when it comes to politics and those kinds of institutions that they should be able to trust. It's the lowest that it's ever been in the last 17 years, which is quite an indictment. And so what we're seeing is that this inability to trust the things around them is really driving a sense of inner belief and inner trust because no one's going to make it happen for me quite clearly. No one's going to advocate for me quite clearly. And so they're kind of leaning into themselves. And I think that's part of what's contributing to this real sense of saying what they think when they think and however it is that they think it.
And how much has technology contributed to how it shapes who they are? Because the same technology that you and I had, you know, the 5110s and you know what what they have now, the Apple 13,
100%.
you know, it's different. You know, how much does that drive their opinions and how they see the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, when Snake was cutting edge technology, right? That was the time. I think it has a huge influence on them, and particularly in terms of how it opens the world for them and what is possible. I mean, even the job that I do as a strategist, I had no idea what a strategist was when I was in school and when I was in university. It's something I only kind of realized when I was much older. And I think that idea of what is possible is one of the huge benefits of social media. And I'm not saying social media doesn't have its problems. Of course it does. But one of the huge benefits is really showing them what is possible and what you can do on your own, which I think is quite extraordinary.
What do you then do with these findings? You have them spoken to these fascinating young people about how they see the world. Where to from here?
Absolutely. So what we do is we then engage with brands. And when I say brands, I don't just mean commercial brands. I think what's really been interesting for us this year is that instead of only looking at commercial insights, we've also looked at insights for NPOs as well as insights for government, because ultimately anybody who wants to serve young people needs to understand them, right?
Yeah.
And so what we do is that we do indeed sell the report to any of these institutions. And what we do is when they do buy it, we actually workshop with them to really figure out what does this mean for you, right? So whether you are the Youth Employment Service or whether you are a commercial brand at, let's say, SAB Miller, it is about what do these insights mean for you and your brands, and how do you better connect and engage with young people, given how important they are as contributors to our economy.
Yeah. Do you find it's easier for brands to sort of absorb something like this because they are targeting a particular market, whereas it might be a bit tricky for a government, for instance, you know, for a youth campaign? Do you find that there are big differences in that?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's about measurement. So I think when you're a commercial brand, you tend to have a lot more pressure to deliver on results that you are held accountable to, that are weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. And I think when you're in a space where you don't have that kind of pressure on delivery, things just move a bit more slowly. So yes, we do see much more significant uptake, but in fairness to the NPOs and to government, we haven't ever really focused on distilling insights for them. And this is the first time that we've really done that, because we think that, you know, even in the way they serve the youth, so the services they mean to provide, how they mean to protect and provide for them, this is the first time we've really done that. And so I'm really hoping that it adds some kind of impact and improves the lives of young people, even if it's in a very small way.
Yeah. I'm curious though, how do you guys decide on the questions to ask? There's so much to ask. They have so much information at their disposal. I mean, how do you make sure that it's just enough and not too much? Because also the attention span is also not, you know, great. You don't want to waste their time.
For sure. I probably think we err on the side of too much. But what we do, and it's part of the reason we ask so many young people, because they know one person has to answer all of the questions, right? So we actually group them into different kinds of questions. So any one child or young person, should I say, you know, only has to answer a limited number of questions. But how we really think about it is, you know, the ones that we think will add the most value to people's lives. So attitudes and perceptions, of course, we want to know what you think and what you feel. And then we think about their behaviors in different verticals, right? So that's all we can do is think about, you know, what are they doing when it comes to online, because we know online is growing as a behavior and it's an increasingly important way of connecting. We think about retail because it is important for our commercial brands to understand that. So we really just apply our minds to what we think are the key areas of their lives and use that as a framework through which to develop questions.
All right, Refilwe, thank you so much for coming through. Such an interesting conversation. The GenNext Youth Behaviour Report is a fact-based report that helps drive brands' ambitions using data from over 7,000 young people. Speaking to us in studio is Refilwe Maluleke. She's the MD at Yellowwood.